This is a video showing you how to use the posts function of your WordPress website. The post section is where you're going to see all of your blog posts or kind of commonly updated things as you go along. It's pretty easy to see all the things you have. They're just listed here, who wrote them and what categories they're under. It's really simple to look at. So if you want to make a new post, then what you just want to do is click this Add New button up here, and what that's going to do is take you to the post editor page. The post editor page is where you're going to actually do all the formatting, all the writing, and everything that's going to go into your post. The first thing you want to do, obviously, is give it a title. So say this is about sandboxes, let's say. So that's what we could title our post. That's all you have to do, and it'll automatically generate the permalink for you depending on what category it's in and then what the actual name of your post is. If you want, you can change the permalink by double clicking on it, and it'll bring up this box right here, and then you can say sandboxes for kids, for instance. Click OK, and then it'll automatically change it. Anyway, that's just the functionality of that. It's pretty simple. Now the actual posting and all the content that goes into it is going to be done in this box right here. And it's pretty simple to do all the formatting you need to do once you actually learn what this toolbar right here does and all of the functions you can use with it. The first functions are really simple. It's just bold, italics, strike-throughs, and underlines. I'm sure you're pretty familiar with all those. So let's say sandboxes are a fun place to play. So if you bold it, obviously it's going to bold what you said. If you make it italics, then it's going to be italicized, strike through, and then underline. Pretty standard stuff. Now the next thing on this list is making an unordered list. What that is going to let you do is say you have multiple lines of things, and what you want to do is just have it be, reasons to enjoy sandboxes. And then this is your list of things for why you like them. What you can do is you just select everything that you want to be in this list, and then just click the unordered list button. It'll automatically do it for you. You don't need to worry about any of the formatting or code that goes in behind it. Now, if you want to undo it, hitting Control-Z for Windows or Command-Z for Macs will just undo it and revert it to where it was. There's a little drop-down of different types of bullet points you can have on your list. You can have boxes, open boxes, really whatever you want. And then if you click it again, it's just going to undo your list. Now say you want to have a list that's actually ordered and has 1, 2, 3. If you have steps like first thing you want to do is get in the sandbox, then build a sandcastle and then destroy it, then you would just click this button right here, and that's going to number your list as opposed to just having it be dots before every item. Again, Control-Z or Command-Z will undo anything that you want it to undo. Now the next thing on here is indentation. You might want to use this at the beginning of a paragraph, but it's kind of unlikely. Every once in a while you want to indent information. And for that you just select what you want to indent and then click indent, and it'll automatically do it. And then you can undo it by clicking outdent. And you can do that as many times as you want in either direction. This next bit is just how it's aligned. This is really simple. I'm sure you've used this plenty of times. Whether you all want to align all the information to the left of the page, the center, the right, or justify it across the entire page. Something to note is that when you justify text, in the editor it won't look justified, but it will spread across the entire width of the post, which is just something to keep track of. So for this, we want everything to be left aligned, so just make sure left aligned is selected. By default, that's what it is. Now this is creating an anchor or a link. Um, it's pretty simple to do. Say you wanted to link to an article about sandboxes. What you could do is just select what word you want to link, and then click Insert Edit Anchor. And what that's going to do is it's going to bring up this dialog box, and that's just going to let you enter in, where on the page you want it to link to. And that's for specifically on your page is what this Insert Edit Anchor does. I'll show you more about that a little bit later on. Then if you want to insert a link to something external from this page, a different URL, then you click this Insert Edit Link, and that's going to open up this diagram. And with this, you can, pick where you want it to go to. Sandboxes.com, for instance, and then the title can just be sandboxes. Let's keep it simple. And then when you click open in new window or tab, what that's going to do is just open the link in a new tab for whoever clicks on this. And now if you're linking to an external website, then you definitely want to have this checked. That way, if they click on the link, they won't actually leave your website. It's a pretty useful feature SEO wise in keeping people on your site. If it's linking internally, it doesn't really matter one way or the other. Generally, you leave it unchecked if it's linking into your site. And then you just click Add Link, and you're done. It's really easy. If you want to remove it, you can just click this unlink right here, and it'll get rid of the link. It's pretty simple stuff. Now this next thing is Insert Edit Image or Edit CSS style. Unless you actually understand how to code a cascading style sheet, you don't want to click this button. Because what it's going to do is it's going to open up the menu with all of the code behind how this website is put together. And honestly, you don't really want that. Because if you do that, there's going to be all these options, and you can change them, but it's really just as easy to change them with the default buttons that are already there. And then this Insert or Edit Image is just for when you want to put media onto your page. I'll go over that more in a minute as well. These more tags and page break tags are specifically for when someone is on your blog and looking at all of your posts. These are for what information is going to show up on there. Honestly, since you're using an Elegant Themes page theme, you don't really need to worry about it or worry about this function all that much. If you do need to worry about it, I'll delve more into that in a future video. This is just the spell checker, so if you spell something wrong, it's going to automatically tell you, and you can do the whole right click to fix it. I'm sure everyone's used to that at this point. The find function is just kind of nice if you ever need to find something in a particularly long post. Like say you have 2,000 words and you need to find something referencing a certain sandbox company, you can just use find and it'll automatically find that word in your post. This is the full screen mode. It's, it just makes your editor full screen, which is kind of nice. You lose a lot of the functionality of all this stuff, but if you want to concentrate on just your writing, then you can kind of see what it's going to look like if you just don't move your mouse. That's what it looks like, and that's kind of nice. And then if you want to exit this, you can just click the exit full screen button up here, and you'll get this page back. Now these three buttons right here are all using some of the plugins that are on the website that we installed. So those are going to be done on their own video specifically. If you want to know how to use them, just go look at those videos. They'll be linked and they'll be on the same YouTube page. Now, these 5 buttons are pretty cool. They're what you get for using an elegant theme. They're really useful if you want to have kind of a more interactive or more in-depth post. For example, this Learn More block, what it'll do is you can have the caption, the top of the actual Learn More block, whether it's open or closed, and what that means is the learn more block starts with, maybe 1 or 2 sentences of information, and then when they click learn more, it's just going to expand down into the rest of the information, and they'll be able to read it. And then once they're done, they can close it so it won't take up as much space on the website. And that's just what this means, whether it's initially open or closed. And then you just write all the content in here, click OK, and it'll automatically create all that stuff for you. It's pretty nice. This next one is just an elegant themes box. Again, it's what type of box you want to make. They all have different formats specific to them, so you might want to play with it a bit. And then you actually write your content in here, click OK, and it generates the shortcodes for you. This one is a button, which is kind of cool. You can have it link to somewhere specifically on your page if you had any anchors, or you can have it linked to an external URL. Whichever you want. You can pick whether it's a small, big, or even smaller type of button, and then what color scheme you're using, and then you write what's actually on the button itself. You want to keep this short because there's not a lot of space on a button to actually write what's on it. And then this is just whether you want to open it in a new window or tab again. External site, you want to link it to a new window. If it's internal and still on your website, then you want it to not, just for general functionality purposes. And again, click OK, and it'll generate all that stuff for you. Then there's the tabs, which this has a bit more to it. These are basically like if you were going through a file cabinet, then each of these tabs would be, a different file. So you would click on one of the tabs and it would open up, new part of that document that'll show you different bits of content. So if you have tabs on the top, and then depending on whether you want to fade or slide between the two, fade is generally what I go with. No for auto sliding, which what that does is it'll automatically switch between each tab if you hit yes. And honestly, you probably don't want it to do that, but there are some instances in which you do want it to. So then you would hit yes. This is in milliseconds how long it takes between each switch. So 5,000 milliseconds is equivalent to 5 seconds. 10 seconds is 10,000, etc., etc. Now the tab text is what the tab actually says itself. So tab 1 means the first tab is just going to say tab 1, and then all the content for the tab goes right in there. And then when you want to add another tab, just click this add one more tab button, and it'll add on another one. So it's going to be tab 2, and content goes here for tab 2. Click OK, and again, it generates all this for you. I can show you what that looks like in this preview. And this is what I mean. When you click between the tabs, it's going to fade between the actual content on the tabs. If you look, when I click between them, for tab 2 fades in and out, and then it just swaps between those. It's a really nice function. It looks pretty good, and you can use that in really a lot of different ways. And then finally, there's an author bio. If you want to put that at the bottom of your page after you're done editing, then you can just put in whatever URL you want to represent you, a little picture of your face or something. Whether you want it to resize it automatically, odds are you do, unless you specifically cropped the image and then resized it so that it fits in the size that this is designated to use. You really just want it set to on, that way you don't have to mess with all that stuff. It'll do it automatically. And then this content is the actual description of you or whoever the author may be. It's pretty simple. Again, do that, hit OK, generates all of the shortcode for you. It's really, really nice. Now, moving on to more formatting settings, there is font size, font family. These are kind of like preset settings for font size, font family, bold, italicized, all that stuff. And then styles, that's specifically kind of CSS oriented. Align center left and right actually just correlates to align center left and right on these buttons right up here, so you don't really need to worry about styles too much. So font size works pretty easily. The default font size, I believe, is 3, and that's 12 points. If you want to make it bigger, you can hit 4 or 5. That's going to make your text bigger if you want it to be a header or something. And then if you want to make it smaller, obviously you just make it smaller. And then revert it to normal by just making it 3. The font family you don't want to play with too much, because when you actually make this post, this isn't the font that's going to show up, because the website itself has certain CSS it applies to the paragraphs and headers and things on your website. So if you select a specific font family for, say, all this stuff, it's going to be different from the rest of the text on your website, and it's going to be inconsistent and kind of look bad. So you just don't want to mess with font family all that much. But what you do want to mess with are these pre-made settings. And these are made specifically for your website. Your website is built to handle these in the code. So say reasons to enjoy sandbox is your header. Maybe you want it to be header 3. And even though it looks kind of small right here, what header 3 actually looks like when you preview it, well, it's actually rather small. So you probably, that's because I left this font family on here. So you just click font size, and that's going to revert it to the default for whatever setting you have right here in this box. So if you use this pre-set up box, then you want to make sure that this is set to font family and this is set to font size and doesn't have a specific size in it and doesn't have a specific font family. So what that's going to look like, if you have those set to their default settings and then heading 3, is this is going to look a bit different, and then it's also going to be a bit bigger. You can do it again with heading 2. Heading 2 is bigger, obviously, as it looks like, and you can see what that looks like here on the preview, like that. And then this right here is an example of the first header where it says sandboxes. And that's kind of this stuff. Really, you just want to mess with these pre-formatted settings. Not specifically pre-formatted, but any of them will work. Alright, so this is a block quote function. What this does is when you select text and then you set it to be a block quote, it's going to kind of take the entire paragraph with it. So you can't take a specific sentence of an entire paragraph and block quote it. You're going to have to select it and then make it into its own paragraph. So to undo that, I would have to actually hit enter, and that's going to, what I would have to do, hit enter, and that's going to turn it into its own paragraph. Now I can select it, hit block quote, and it will just block quote this. It won't block quote anything else in the paragraph. And a block quote, when you go to the preview, looks like this. It's going to italicize the font, give it kind of a dark gray background, and then what you want to do at the end of the block quote is, type whatever it is that they're going to write, and then hit enter, and then maybe, put a little tilde, and then the person's name. And that's going to show up like this in the block quote. So that way you get who's being quoted and what their actual quote is. It's a pretty useful function, especially if you ever want to make testimonials or something like that. Again, you can use maybe the Elegant Themes tabs if you want more than one testimonial, a box, really it's up to you. You have all these resources, why not play with them? And you can undo it by just clicking the block quote button again. It's pretty simple. Citation, when you do that, it's going to bring up all this stuff, and that's, well, I mean, really, you don't need to mess with that much. What that's doing is it's just kind of putting specific things into the code, where if you want to give this piece of text a specific title, which is kind of when you mouse over it what shows up. Styling, that's CSS styling. There are certain classes. Again, all of these settings can just be found in the rest of the buttons up here. So you don't need to worry about citation too much. Remove formatting is just going to turn everything into the default formatting. So say with this, how it's heading to, if you remove the formatting, it's going to change, any of this stuff up here, really any specific formatting besides the actual size and bold, or, italics or any of that sort of stuff. Custom characters can be useful sometimes. What these are specific things that, you don't have on your keyboard very often. I mean, you might have an ampersand in some of these, but, I would be kind of impressed if you had any of these on your keyboard. I don't know how many people have Greek keyboards anymore, or ever. So if you ever need to make one of these symbols, you can just click on this button right here and it'll bring up this character menu, and then you can just click it and it'll go onto your page. It's a pretty nice function, saves a lot of time if you don't want to memorize a bunch of codes, which honestly nobody does. Printing just prints your page, if you ever want to do that. I don't think you really need to worry about that too much, because I don't think you're going to want to print your drafts. But if you do, the option's there. Select text color is really like any other program. You can just select whatever color you want the text to be. It can be red, it can be black, etc., etc. You can make the text color whatever you want it to be. Again, this is one of those things where the website has formatting specific to itself. Most of the text is a slightly off black color. The background is kind of a off, well, it's a pattern and it's slightly off gray. So if you make this text black specifically, like say you just made these two black and then this stayed the normal color, these are going to look a little bit off comparatively to the rest of the website. So that's another one of the things you don't want to mess with too much, and another one of those things that you should be able to click this remove formatting button and it should fix. If not, you can always use Control Z or Command Z and just, undo it. Now, again, if you don't want to use Control or Command Z, you can use the undo function and redo function right here. That's just if you don't want to memorize keyboard shortcuts, they're right here. And again, you can use that with cut, copy, paste, and find replace. Those are all functions available here if you don't want to memorize the keyboard commands for them, which is pretty useful. Then there are these three things. These two are horizontal rules, which are kind of just lines across your page to help split up content. So if you click Insert Horizontal Ruler button, it's going to make this line, and that goes the full width of your post. And that's just going to block out information from the top of this from maybe at the bottom. And then this button does the same thing, but it lets you do a bit more. You can decide how many pixels tall you want the rule to be. You can decide if you want there to be a shadow on it or not. That's going to make it more defined if there is a shadow. And then if you have this checked, there's not going to be a shadow. And then you can also say whether you want it to just be maybe 200 pixels wide, as opposed to the full width of your post, which is what this button does, the default horizontal rule. Then you insert it, and this is going to automatically center into your page and just be there to split up your content. Then this button is a non-breaking space character, which one of the issues that WordPress originally had was when you hit space, say I put 10 spaces in there, only one of them or two of them would actually show up because of the way they format in the code and how HTML ignores extra spaces. So what this button does is it makes it so there's actually a character in there that represents an empty space in HTML. So if you want something to be, say 10 spaces out, then you just click this 10 times, and what that's doing is it's actually putting characters in here that are actually invisible once HTML reads them, and it just puts a space in there, as opposed to, whatever characters it actually is. This is the superscript and subscript buttons. They're pretty self-explanatory. You just select whatever text you want to be superscripted, click superscript, and it'll do it. And then same with subscript, and you just click them to undo it. This is another one of those insert or embed media things that I'm going to talk about in a later video. So feel free to go to that video later. It's going to be linked and on the same YouTube page as all this stuff. Tables. So what a table is it's just like a spreadsheet or something. You have a certain number of columns across and number of columns down, and then information in there. So when you click insert a new table, it's going to bring up this menu that asks you, how many columns and rows you want to have. So if you want to have, say, 3 of each, cell padding is inside each of those, little boxes you create. There's going to be a certain amount of space around it where text isn't going to line up right next to it. So if you have cell padding be, say 3 pixels, I don't think you need to put the px on there, but just for safety I'm going to do it there now. Then what that's going to do is it's automatically going to make sure that instead of going up right next to the side of your table, there's going to be a little bit of padding like there is right here. So instead of this line touching this line, there may be 5 pixels of padding between the two. And that just kind of makes it look better. 3 pixels or 5 pixels is generally a pretty good range. Cell spacing is the actual space between the cells or the little boxes you have on your table. Border is the border around the table. Width and height is the width and height of the table. So if I have 3 columns and 3 rows and then make it, 300 pixels by 300 pixels, which you don't need the px there, by the way, then each column and row is going to be 100 pixels with the cell padding in it. Alignment, this is where the table is going to be, whether you want it in the center of your page, the left side of your page, or the right side. Class, again, center, left, and right just apply to alignment. And then these you don't need to worry about because they'll automatically get applied as you use it. You can go into more advanced properties if you want by, changing what the ID of the table is, what the summary of it is. If you want there to be a background image on it, you can actually put the URL of the background image in here. It's not really the most useful function in the world, but if you have a specific texture or something you want to put behind it, you can definitely put a background image in there. And then same thing goes here. You can change the background color or the border color, assuming you have it. So once you get all of your settings figured out, then you just click insert and it's going to create a table for you automatically. It's pretty nice. And then what you want to do to edit that is you can just type in one of the tables and it'll automatically fill it in. That's pretty basic. Now what you want to do, say I have this extra row here that I want to get rid of, then I can actually get rid of it by just clicking this delete row button. And you don't have to have, everything in the row selected. You just need to have your cursor inside the row. And when you do that, that's just going to delete the whole row. Now your table is going to keep the same width and height, but just lose the row. So if you want to change the width and height, then you have to actually change the settings in the table itself. Then you can do the same thing with remove column. You just need to be in the column specifically. Click this remove column button and it'll take it away. Then if you want to add in another row, then you can insert a row after or before using these buttons, and that'll just add a row before or after the row that you're in right now. And then same thing goes with these columns. And again, you have to type in them for them to actually get spaced out properly. And yeah, that looks like it's about it. You don't ever need to edit the HTML source because that's, again, more coding stuff. If you know how to use HTML, then go for it, but anything that you need to do, you can do with all these buttons just right up here. Then in the next video, what I'm going to do is just go over all these media buttons so you can actually tell how to upload stuff to your page and actually have pictures on it and videos and all the cool stuff you want so people keep reading it, so it's not just a huge wall of text.